Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Phil Perry will join in just a moment. But if you hadn't had enough Snubgate, you've come to the right place. Snubgate, day 3, rolls on. Tom Brady releasing a video earlier today, which in essence revisits his comments that he made about Patriots fans in October, which really revisits the comments he made about Patriots fans in March of 2020. More than anything, the video is a salute to his teammates and his family here in New England and the 20 years he spent here. Why does this continue? Well, it continues because Brady decided to tweak the Patriots a little bit. Bill Belichick, of course, I think was coerced into releasing a statement on Wednesday night saying, "I am privileged to have drafted and coached Tom Brady, the ultimate competitor and winner." Tom's humble beginning in professional football ultimately ended with him becoming the best player in NFL history. I thank Tom for his relentless pursuit of excellence and positive impact on me and the Patriots for 20 years. Now, that statement actually includes a promotion because 2 years ago, Brady was described as a special person and the greatest quarterback of all time. So Lawrence Taylor has been lapped, and Reggie White and Barry Sanders and Jim Brown and Jerry Rice and Joe Montana. Good for Tom, good for Bill. The upshot of this, though, is that there's no way that Belichick wasn't asked from higher up to put this statement out. Why? Because he kind of hates the window dressing and the falseness of all this stuff in the first place. I'm sure that he felt similar to Brady in that Belichick said the stuff 2 years ago and again in October that he was being asked to say again now. I can imagine he really didn't care that much that he wasn't included in Brady's statement earlier this week. As I said beginning Tuesday, this is a craft level bone that Brady was picking when he released his retirement statement. The Patriots had an opportunity to make sure that they were the only team that would be included in any goodbye. They passed on that. Robert Kraft decided to be Pontius Pilate, leave it up to Bill Belichick. And all those times that Robert Kraft intervened in Brady contract negotiations, they didn't happen in 18 or 19 or 20. He didn't ensure, Robert Kraft, that Brady stayed here. So this was an effort to just say, hey, there's a reason I'm thanking the Buccaneers. And that's because the Patriots didn't step to the plate. Petty? Yeah, maybe. But Tom Brady never operated without a chip on his shoulder successfully, so the chip was still there. I don't think people generally appreciate how desperate Brady was to finish his career here, how betrayed and taken advantage of he felt from the drafting of Jimmy Garoppolo right on through the 2019 contract renegotiation announced as a 2-year extension that wasn't. There was a lot of shell games going on, a lot of misdirection. But in the end, Brady realized that the Patriots were pushing away from the table on him. Business is business, but it left a mark. They didn't believe in him the way he believed in himself. Now, this doesn't mean that Brady hates the Krafts or hates Bill Belichick or hates you. Doesn't mean everything he said in previous statements is untrue. He just doesn't think that Robert Kraft, Bill Belichick, and the Patriots get multiple thank yous. At least that's how he felt until today. They didn't make sure he could retire here. They say living well is the best revenge, right? Brady did that for 2 years, post-Patriots. He lived well. But he operates with chips on his shoulder. So revenge is also a dish best served cold. He took advantage of that and served up a cold statement. And I'm sure Kraft is tortured by this. But Brady's agitation at the end was possibly greater towards ownership because for years they intervened on his behalf. And this time around, they said, no, not going to do that. It's interesting, too. This is the statement that Brady made in 2020, thanking teammates, coaches, executive staff, Coach Belichick, RKK, the Kraft family, the entire organization. I want to say thank you for the past 20 years of my life and the daily commitment to winning and creating a culture built on great values. I'm grateful for all you taught me. I've learned from everyone. I cherished every opportunity I had to be part of our team. I love you for all of that. Our team has set a great standard in sports. To the fans, says, I want to say thank you to the incredible fans and Patriots supporters in a separate statement. Massachusetts has been my home for 20 years. It's been the happiest 2 decades I could have ever envisioned in my life. And I have nothing but love and gratitude for my time in New England. I mean, what else do you guys want? The last thing I'll mention statement-wise before Hall and Phil in here is this is what Robert Kraft said in 2020 in his statement. How do I possibly sum up the depth of my gratitude for Tom Brady and what he's given us for 20 years, or the sadness I know in that it's ending? I had hoped this day would never come, but rather that Tom would end his remarkable career in a Patriots uniform after yet another Super Bowl championship. Unfortunately, the two sides were unable to reach an agreement to allow that dream to come to a reality. The two sides, as if he wasn't an active participant. And then at the end of Robert's statement, he says, I now look forward to the day we can bring him back home to New England to celebrate his Patriots career, endless achievements, and his legacy as the greatest of all time. I love him very much. That's the kind of thing that rankled Brady, I'm sure. You got a chance here, Robert. You have the opportunity to make this happen. And then when it doesn't happen and I'm going someplace else, you act like there was no personal involvement and you couldn't have stopped it from happening. Let's bring Phil in. Skull Crusher told me, Phil, that I went for 7 minutes. So I don't know if you were able to stick with me for all of that, but what are your feelings here?
I'll stick with you through thick and thin, Thomas. You know that. My thoughts are similar in that you had to pay, essentially. You had to pay to be front and center on the retirement announcement. Simple as that. I do find his Instagram video that was released on Thursday to be interesting, though, Tom. And I'd like to get your take. Is this a PR move on his part? Did he feel like, given the reaction to the initial retirement announcement, that he had to do something, if not a specific lengthy statement about the Patriots? Now he has this relatively lengthy video, which prominently features the Patriots. Not just Patriots, plenty of Buck stuff in there as well. But Robert Kraft's voice, even though he's not pictured, his voice is included in the video. And I'm wondering if Brady just got a sense of what the reaction was the last 48 hours or so and said, okay, I probably should do something here that is a tip of the cap to the New England region.
I was told on Tuesday when the outcry began that there's probably going to be a video. I think the video was in process. Ironically, though, I was also told by the same person that Tuesday was the planned day for the retirement. So why would the video not have been ready then? Additionally, since we're going Zapruder level on all these statements, we didn't get a video of ownership here. And we only got 6 seconds or so of Robert Kraft's voice, 49 seconds into the 1 minute video. I mean, you see Belichick on the sideline, you see so many teammates, because I think that's what his career was about. And at this juncture, he wants to celebrate the guys that he sweated with and the people who made sacrifices for him, i.e. his family. So
it's interesting you bring that up too, Tom, because I think fans and Robert Kraft, we've talked about both of those ends of his Patriots life and the fact that they were omitted from that retirement announcement. But his Patriots teammates were too. And maybe he felt as though, okay, I should be doing something for those guys. And so for the initial video to be of that Patriots 2001 team coming out of the tunnel together, I thought was fitting. And maybe he was feeling something in that regard.
That's an awesome question. I wonder if we polled the 1,000 or so teammates that he had here in New England, how many would harbor the feeling that, why nothing for us? I bet, and I'm sure you'll agree, that most of them would say, pleasure was mine. Yeah, I don't need it. You know, especially the latter day ones, you know, maybe Anthony Pleasant. No, he was too nice a guy. Maybe Ty. I should talk to Lawyer Malloy. We can get him on the pod. That'd be a great guy to talk to for this. We'll try and get him next week. Oh, no, we're at the Super Bowl. Be that as it may.
Maybe he'll be there. He's a West Coast guy.
Thinking out loud. I just think in the end, the question I pose to you is, after Spygate, Deflategate, now Snubgate, is this going to leave a dent, a stain, a smear, or is it just another moment of unbelievably over-contrived but interesting and fascinating drama around Tom Brady, the New England Patriots, et cetera?
It's the latter. It will be the former for some. I think some people were really hurt by this. I know our NBC 10 cameras found people on the streets of Boston, you know, middle-aged women saying they were crying about this. They named a pet Brady years ago and he did the wrong thing here. And even if he does something later, it's too late. He already did what he did and it hurts too much. But I think even for those people, after a little time passes, it'll be just more of what you said. It'll just be a blip on the vast vast radar screen of drama that we've had over the last decade or so here.
I mean, I don't even know if this is the right word. If it was a fresco, is that what you call it? If you painted on the roof, like Sistine Chapel-esque, the Patriots history, somewhere over here, there'd be a big fan at the end going, just angry that they weren't talked to. We'll get Michelangelo on that.
Holding
I will say
a phone
this.
saying,
I will say this. Generally speaking, the people who are most outraged are casuals. Sorry. The people who are the most pissed off are casual Patriots fans who probably were not necessarily football fans and were fans because of the success of the team. And they don't recall that 2 years ago, as I said, the Brady statement said specifically, I want to say thank you to all the incredible Patriots fans and supporters. All that he said, the support has been overwhelming. I wish every player could experience it. My children were born and raised here, and you always embrace this California kid as your own. I love your commitment and loyalty to your teams, and winning for our city means more than you will ever know. I can't thank you enough for the support of our team, the packed training camps and sold out stadiums, and mostly the victory parades. I've been so blessed to share them with you all. Okay, none of them remember that. The casuals don't remember that. And that's why they're like, hey, we made him. He owed us. That's why we got that.
and so maybe they'll forget this one too, relatively quickly, you know?
Oh, they'll remember this one.
Here's the thing. I think it's sort of fans on both
An
ends of the
Irish
spectrum.
grudge.
Well, there will be a little bit of that from those who felt like they were on the wall for Deflategate. So I think you're right. I think it'll be casual fans who feel that way, but you'll also have those fans that were way on the other end of the spectrum and became so involved in that thing that are probably feeling the hurt. And Tom, I get it, right?
I do.
Part of the reason we have jobs is because these people are nuts about their team and they're nuts about their players and they're nuts about Tom Brady specifically. So I do understand that. I do.
But we are not going to kowtow to them and say it's okay and let them cry on each other's shoulders and massage backs. We're going to say, suck it up. Enjoy the football. Okay? You're okay. Because he said all that stuff. TC. Crochet. All right. We're going to come back in a second. We're going to talk Brian Flores and the lawsuit that he's brought against the NFL and all the facets and the fascinating facets of a troubling story. Be right back. All right, back at it again. Phil, you did a fantastic job talking to Joe Banner, former Browns and Eagles executive, about the notion of sham interviews to satisfy the Rooney Rule. And I think what's interesting is it was an open secret, and I don't even know if it was a secret, because part of the intention of the Rooney Rule in making sure that Black and minority candidates were interviewed was to make sure they got to sit down in front of owners and were exposed to ownership. So by their definition, they were almost set up to be get to know yous as opposed to legitimate interviews. So I guess the point I'm making is, I don't know if the Rooney Rule needs to be tightened or if folks want hiring quotas for head coaching positions, but these interviews, I don't know if there's one solution to the head coaching situation here.
Yeah, the solution, Tom, or at least one solution to it, is something that Joe Banner explained to me on the Next Pats podcast. So let's just get to his answer right now. He can explain it to us.
It's a really complex issue. I mean, the Rooney Rule isn't the answer. He's absolutely right about that. There are sham interviews just to comply with the rules. To say that that's wrong is very easy. I can't imagine any reasonable person not thinking that's wrong. But when you get to what is the right answer, what steps could we actually take to make a difference, it's really complicated. You know, it does start with a right attitude from the league and the owners, as this being something that they have to recognize hasn't been done right or done well over years and things need to change. I actually think some of the changes they made in the last year or two for the first time have been consequential. So it's invisible to the public, but for the first time at the level of interns, quality control coaches, all the way through coordinators, there's a much better representation of African Americans than there was a couple of years ago. And I believe that's going to translate into improved representation at the head coaching level here very soon. So I just hope people realize that the fact that there are so few It doesn't mean at least recently there hasn't been a legitimate effort. I think we've got to evolve and accelerate it. And I hope that's what comes out of the lawsuit.
So, Tom, just to detail a little bit more what Banner is explaining there, the NFL back in late 2020 put in a rule that said if a team has a minority executive or coach who is hired away by another club to be a head coach or a GM, then the original team will get 3 draft picks, compensatory picks basically in 3 consecutive years. So they are incentivizing hiring minority candidates at lower levels, developing them, turning them into, or allowing them the platform to turn themselves into good candidates to be hired elsewhere. And when they are, then that team is rewarded. That's one thing that could end up helping. But I think the issue with that, I think Banner would acknowledge this, is that is going to take time. So you have a very new rule with people that are now being hired and being elevated. And we are seeing it. Coordinator positions, quarterback coaching positions, which we know is a critical spot. Zach Taylor goes from being quarterback coach to head coach. One fell swoop.
The offensive side of the ball. The representation on the defensive side of the ball far outpaces the representation on the offensive side of the ball.
No
which
doubt.
Of course, goes back to the long-held belief that the NFL has as a stain on its history that blacks were not well suited to play quarterback in the league.
Right.
So as a result, you'll often see fewer black coordinators, offensive coordinators. Eric Bieniemy being an exception, and for whatever reason, he doesn't get many interviews and he hasn't succeeded in any, despite the very obvious efforts by so many to make sure that it's obvious that he has been bypassed. What I think
those numbers are getting better, Tom, and it is going to take it could take years before
the
head coaching numbers get better.
That's that coordinator to head coach glass ceiling that you have to puncture to get owners to say, I want to work with this individual. And here's one thing we haven't talked about. I want my fan base to embrace this individual. I think when we look at the NFL and what's happened over the last couple of years, whether it be with the anthem or whether the fact that we have a massive country with so many different held beliefs, there might be a knee-jerk reaction by some owners to saying, I don't know if my fan base is going to relate to that coach. Philadelphia didn't have a problem with it ever. New York didn't. Chicago did great with Lovie Smith, and he did great there. I think when we look around the country, we would presume that some places would more readily embrace an African-American head coach than others. And I don't want to broad brush it. I'm not talking about fan bases necessarily. I'm talking about owners, because they're going to gauge the gate. Who do I want on my sidelines representing our franchise? Who do I want in front of the podium? Who do I feel comfortable with? And that is about puncturing that barrier from coordinator to head coach, because so many of these owners come from backgrounds which early on in their lives did not necessarily involve African Americans, blacks, minorities, and they live lives of privilege which are insulated.
I think there are a variety of factors that will play into this. And I think the hope is, and listen, Brian Flores has submitted in his lawsuit potential solutions, right? Until what Joe Banner and others that have spoken to over the course of the last few years or few days, that do feel like this new rule where you have people being hired at lower levels and they work their way up, and the pipeline is just so filled with minority candidates that teams won't be able to help themselves but to have interview processes that are loaded with these guys. They don't have to force themselves to select one or two to be interviewing just to satisfy a rule and check a box. It'll be a different story. Hopefully that might be years from now, but Brian Flores proposes some things that they could do right now that might also help. So you're already incentivizing hiring minority candidates, and if they leave, you get draft picks. That's great. What about draft picks for teams that hold on to head coaches or coordinators for years, or general managers for years, so that they are, helping get the game to where it should be in terms of representation? Even, Tom, I think something as simple as making salaries public, I think would hold owners' feet to the fire to a certain extent in terms of how they're treating their employees, white versus black. So those are things that I don't think would be all that difficult to try to figure out that they could do quickly here.
Yeah, because it's interesting when you think of Brian Flores' situation, what made it hit critical mass for this particular coach? What made him get to the level where he would file suit? And I think there's probably a number of different factors. First, it's going to Miami, being told to lose, allegedly, in actuality, at least they tried to make themselves lose. And Flores took a team that in the second week of 2019 was JV level, lost to the Patriots 43-0, and it could have been worse. And by the end of the year, they were beating the Patriots in the final game of the season. A remarkable coaching job that cost them a draft position that could have brought them Joe Burrow. So you first have a guy who succeeded. He was sent into, I've used this analogy, he was sent into a burning house with a bucket, and he put the fire out, and he started to rebuild. For how much money? Probably not that much relative to a John Gruden, for instance, or a Bill Belichick or a Pete Carroll. Yeah, they had experience, whatever. But so often black candidates are put into these situations, set up to fail, and then fail, i.e. David Culley, and then are dismissed. Flores succeeded. He was dismissed anyway. Then he goes to New York and finds out that this sham interview, which is de rigueur, and we're used to it, was being orchestrated on his behalf. So I think those two things in concert probably caused this. So now I'm back to just being the guy who sits in front of you to check a box. These interviews, when someone sits there with an owner or an executive and gets 3.5 hours of good point there, wow, impressive, really like you, and then they walk out the door and think they have a chance and then find out they don't, it doesn't mean that even though we know that they are, and folks feel that these are oftentimes just exercises in futility, it doesn't make it any less humiliating, embarrassing, or maddening, I'm sure, for those candidates to be walking to their car with a level of optimism and then find out they didn't get the job. It's humiliation. We don't think about that. So I think that's maybe what led to Flores' agitation, Phil.
Well, right. And because
agitation being an understatement.
No doubt. I mean, he's taken a promising career at a very young age. He's 40 years old, a long head coaching career ahead of him. If he wanted it, Tom, he might have gotten one of these jobs that he is still up for, technically. Houston, New Orleans. And yet he says, no, this is more important. This is bigger than football, as he said many times earlier this week. And so I think the fact that he is at the point in his career where he is, coming off of 2 winning seasons for a bad franchise, resurrecting that thing, it's different than when he went to interview for, say, the Cardinals job back in, I think it was the winter of 2018, where he's looking at it and saying, okay, first interview, right, if this is one of those just to get me some experience, that's one thing. But no, I'm a legitimate candidate right now. You need to actually interview me for this job, and you need to consider me for this job. And if you're not, then what are your actual motivations here?
And that's what happened with the New York Giants. I'm sure his perception is, look, I'm not just a box checker anymore. Don't treat me like that, especially after I just was treated the way I was in Miami. We got a lot to get to, and we're going to get to Los Angeles over the weekend for the Super Bowl. Next time you will hear from us will be from I Love LA. We will certainly continue to monitor all situations relative to the Patriots and the Brian Flores suit, which I'm sure we're going to have plenty of conversations about, which will be fascinating to listen to on a societal level and a cultural level as well. So appreciate you guys. We'll talk to you soon.